Hello everyone, welcome to the class 1 part 1 of the workflow training. In this part 1, we are going to see what is workflow, what is manual workflow, what are the disadvantages of the manual workflow, why SAP workflow. We will see what is SAP business workflows, what is the transaction for that, what is the task and work item. Then we will see different types of tasks and the difference between messages and work items. And also we'll see what is the workflow builder. And then we are going to see about the agents. So let's go and start. Workflow introduction. When we talk about in most of the business scenario, workflow is involved. For example, if you have to release a purchase order, that means if you have to finalize a purchase order, then in that case, you are again going to have the workflow in place. So let's suppose like if you don't have the SAP or SAP workflow in picture, like SAP workflow implemented in your organization, then maybe if they have to raise a purchase order, if someone is raising the purchase order, right? So it has to be approved, right? So when it has to be approved, it will go to, it will go to the person, right? It will go to the person, maybe the line manager of this immediate employee, right? So this employee is going to create the purchase order, right? If it is manual, just you think about the manual workflow. It's creating the purchase order, then sending the email, attaching the PO to this manager, and this manager is going to approve and send it back, right? Again, let's suppose the amount over here is maybe $100. So in case of $100, maybe this approval is sufficient, right? This is fine. But if amount is, let's suppose $1,000, okay? So in case of amount, if it is $1,000, then in this case, maybe the system in that organization is that it has to go to the higher level, manager, okay? Because that their approval is required because amount is more over here. So again, this employee is sending the email by attaching the attaching the PO, and again, he is going to send it back to over here after, giving the approval. Then let's suppose again the amount is more than this 1,000, maybe a 1 lakh, dollar. Then in that case, maybe the higher level of management approval will be required. And in that case, again, he or she has to send the email by attaching the PO to this manager, and he has to approve and send it back to this employee. How tedious it is, right? If you are doing it manually, how tedious it is. 3 times we'll have to send the email. Not only this, if this person is there on some vacation or somewhere else, in that case, he or she has to wait. Let's suppose this purchase order can be approved by the group of certain people. She has to send to a list of the people, and she has to, like, if no one is approving, she has to inquire with everyone, right? Manual intervention, time taking, no deadline monitoring. If it is going to be sit there in manager inbox for longer duration, you know is he does not know, like, email has come or something like that, he's not checking the email, maybe he's on vacation or somewhere else, right? He's not able to approve on that time, right? There is no deadline monitoring, right? So some hodgepodge situation arises, and that's where the SAP workflow comes into picture. Okay, so the same things I have tried to demonstrate in this particular PPT, right? So this is the employee sending the email to this manager, approval received, again sending to second manager, approval received, he's enjoying on the beach. After 10 days, he has, sent back the approval. Again, here you can see that for the final approval, she's sending to his, and again, he's approving. And then at last, like your finally PO is going to get released, right? So this is the manual stuff. So with every manual things, there is some limitation, right? So what is that limitation? What is that drawback? Drawback for that is there is a lack of transparency. What kind of email he's receiving, what kind of email was sent by the employee with the body, right? And since how many days that manager is keeping that particular email with him for approval, no one knows. So lack of transparency, long lead times, right? It can take longer time for the approval, lack of deadline monitoring, no one is so lack of deadline monitoring also we have understood, like there is no rule defined if for a certain period of time, if a work item or if a email is there in their inbox, how the manager like how next will happen, how the next thing will happen. So these are the disadvantages. Coming to the next slides, why SAP workflow? So SAP workflow, now you would have understood with the help of limitation of the manual workflow, why SAP workflow is required. So SAP workflow, what it will help you to achieve that for the same process, when the PO was created, workflow will be automatically triggered with the help of SAP workflow. The event will be triggered. Once the event is going to get triggered, the mail will be automatically triggered to the first line manager, first level manager, after his approval. Let's suppose like if he is not present for 2 days or 3 days, you can define in the system like after waiting for 3 days, maybe that PO send back to the, original PO creator, original PO requester, and inform them like he's not available, what to do next. Or maybe you can define in the workflow that if he's not available, just move forwards and go to the next manager. So this thing can be done. Okay, again, when the email or work item will come over here, he's going to approve it. And if it is required, like if the amount is more, it will go to the third manager, that means to the highest manager who is responsible for approving that specific amount. And after approval of this, maybe you can have nth level of approval in place over there, that you can automate with the help of SAP workflow. That's the power of SAP workflow. And at last your PO will be approved, your PO will be released, and finally you will be able to send to the vendor. Okay, so hope you are able to understand the concept of SAP workflow. Here, deadline monitoring you can achieve, you can automate, like after approval, if you want automatically to trigger some email to perform some task, at each and every step we can associate the task. Task can be associated. This is also a task, right? This manager is going to this manager is going to approve. So for approval, you have to write the logic, right? It is not like that the SAP does everything, right, himself. There will be some sort of logic written. That means after approval, some changes in the database layer should take place. Some flag should be set. right? So all those things need to be done with the help of some BAPI or some OpenSQL, right? In the method of a class or in the method of the business object. So in order to understand in much detail about the workflow, you should have at least the basic understanding of the object oriented concept like class, method. You should know about the business object. So this is the prerequisite. Okay. Or what I will be doing, maybe I will be letting you know, or I will be uploading these two uh, one or two videos related with the BO or BAPI, so that you will be having the understanding. Okay. So every task is associated with some class method or business object method. Today's demo, I will show you that by creating one simple workflow. Okay. Now, when you define a task, the transaction for that is a PFTC. You should know this is very important transaction in workflow, PFTC. There you can go and define the task. Task is of again of two types, you know, one single step and another is the multi-step. Single step task is a simple task. Multi-step task you can also know that as a workflow or sub workflow. We will see in more detail about that. Now, work item. This manager, you can see that he's receiving something over here. So this is not a message. This is work item. What is this work item? So work item means the item on which some action need to be taken by the manager. That is known as the work item. Technically, if you want to define the work item, you can define something like work item is an instance of the task. Okay. And where you can go and check it out your work item, like this manager has to go in his, SBWP, S, SBWP. This is the transaction where he has to go SAP business work, SAP business work process. Like this is the transaction where he can go and check it out what work item he has received and what he has to take the action. I will show you this transaction as well in our today's demo. Now let's go and see this. Moving forward, the same thing which here, SAP business workplace, not process, sorry for that, SBWP, SAP business workflows. How you can define a standard working environment for a business user to receive the messages, documents, and work items. Okay. So now let's go to the next slide and try to understand what is the task and work items. We have just understood task is nothing but, for each step in the workflow is associated with generally a task, all the activity in the workflow is associated with the task. Once I will show you the demo, it will be more easier. And work items is the instance of the task, like object is the instance of the class, right? We all know object is the instance of the class. Similarly, task is a template, and work items is the actual object on which the action is taken. Work items can be seen inside the SWBP, SBWP, SAP Business Workplace, and there the action can be taken. Also, you can explore the work items under the transaction SWIA or SWI1. Different transactions are there on which you can go and check it out. Fine. That also we will see. Different types of tasks we have already discussed. Now, different attributes of a task. Task is categorized in the 4 different category. One is the general task, most of the time you are going to select this one in your real-time situation. General task forwarding allowed. That means if a task you are going to mark as a this property, that means you can forward to any user who is defined as a recipient. Okay. Then general task forwarding not allowed. That means you will not be able to forward to any other user apart from the possible users. So once we go into the more detail about the agents, we'll be able to understand 4 different types of agents we are having, that we will see it later. Forwarding not allowed means it cannot be forwarded to any of the user. So here you have some restriction. Here forwarding not at all allowed. General task is the most widely used one. So now let's see the difference between messages and work item workflow. So messages and work item, workflow builder, I will show you in the transaction. This is like wrongly I have typed it. So just ignore this workflow builder at this moment. The difference between message and work item we'll see. So let me write it over here. Messages, see, once messages go into your inbox, and if you read it, it will not disappear from your inbox. So after reading the messages, it doesn't disappear from the inbox. It will remain over there, but in case of work item, what will happen once the action is taken? Once the action is taken, it will disappear. It will disappear from inbox. This part I will show you. So this is the main difference between this. With the help of work item, the next action automatically gets triggered. But when you read, here you can write this point also. The next action automatically gets triggered once you take the action on the work item. Okay. After taking the action on the work item, here no automatic action, no automatic next action. So these are some important differences which you should know. Workflow builder, SWDD is the transaction for that. We will see that. Agents. Here you can see that there are 3 types of agents. Agents is a separate chapter that we will see in more detail, but as of now, just to understand, there are 3 types of agents. Agents means the one to which the work item goes for approval. In case of our PO, you have seen that the first line manager, second line manager, third line manager, right? So these are the agents. So in the layman terms, these are the agents. Okay. So agent can be of different type that we will also see, but those are generally known as the agent who has to take the action on the work item. Okay. The users who are eligible to take action on the work item, that is the possible agents. Responsible agents means the user who are selected, to execute the work item. See, someone are eligible. For example, like in your office, let's suppose 5 people are eligible for achieving the super performer star award, but only out of 5, 2 are chosen for, 2 are elected for receiving that particular awards. So the one who are elected is known as over here the responsible agents. These are the possible agents who are eligible for executing the work item, and the one who actually takes the action. Okay. One who actually takes the action on the work item, that is known as the actual agent. Okay. So with this, our theoretical part of the class 1 part 1 is completed. Let's go and move into the part 2, where we are going to create one workflow and we will try to understand all this terminology which we have discussed with the help of one real-time example.